Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The time's now 7 o'clock, so we're going to make a prompt start. Good evening, welcome to this, the latest in a long line of community conversations. I do stress the words conversation because this is as much about you hearing from us as it is about us hearing from you. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Gareth Roberts. I'm the leader of the council. And I will shortly be introducing all of my colleagues on the panel who are here to answer your questions, to listen to your views, and find out what it is that you're thinking. Some housekeeping. We have to do the inescapable housekeeping. So, if anybody is needing to use the facilities at any point in this meeting, it says here that they're located downstairs. Where downstairs? I couldn't tell you, but
there are signs.
There are signs, apparently. Signs over there being looked at. Hannah's pointing at the back. There are no planned fire drills whilst we are hosting the event. If fire alarms do go off, please support with evacuating attendees, if you are not able to move them out yourself, through the nearest safe exit routes, which are over here, and I believe there's an exit route behind me as well, I may be wrong. And the meeting point is on Little Green. And there are annex maps around the walls which may be able to help you with that. And I believe that there is a defibrillator on site should we require one. We also have a British Sign Language interpreter. Where's our British Sign Language interpreter this evening? Yeah. There you are. Hello. Amatayo is going to be helping us out with that. And now, so what I will do, if I've got any other my points which I need to continue with. No, I don't. So, let's start with introductions. We'll go right from the far end over there.
Hello, I'm Councillor Nancy Baldwin. I am the spokesperson for communities, equalities, and the voluntary sector, and the community conversations are part of what I do. You're going to see me play with my phone. It's because my hearing aids are connected to it, and it's the only way I can make it work. So please forgive me if you see that.
Okay, and I'm Chris Farley, Councillor Chris Farley. I'm the incoming lead member for housing.
I'm Katie Mansfield. I'm the lead member for Richmond Town Centre and the White Ribbon Champion to fight against violence against women and girls.
Good evening, I'm Jim Millard. I'm one of the joint deputy leaders of Richmond Council and lead member for finance and resources.
And I'm Julia Needham-Watts, the other joint deputy leader of the council, and I chair the Environment, Sustainability, Culture and Sport Committee.
Good evening, my name is Alexander Raymond. I'm chair of the Transport and Air Quality Committee in Richmond.
And last but not least, I'm Councillor Phil Geeds from a ward councillor in Teddington, and I'm the lead member for economic growth.
Thank you. Joining us also in the front row, we have Councillor Julia Cambridge, who is chair of the Education and Children's Services Committee, and Councillor Piers Allen, who is chair of the Adults Health and Adult Social Care and Housing Committee. Let me see, is there any other point which I must raise? So how this is going to work is that what we have is we have all of the portfolio holders and chairs of the various council committees which are here to answer questions or address points which you may wish to raise. We've tried to arrange it so that it's the people that we've spoken to, on subjects in the past, the ones which are usually the most raised, but of course if there is anything about children's services or adult services which Councillor Cambridge or Anna can help with, then they are here to assist. But really, it's down to you. It's going to find out what your views are. And we've been doing this for some time now. I think we've been doing community conversations in some form or another since 2018. And should the council be re-elected in May of this year, I'm sure any party that's going to be leading the council will be keen to keep them up because they're incredibly valuable. They give us a really, first-hand insight into what residents are thinking. And it's worth pointing out that we are all residents too. We are not this sort of strange alien island of people who just descend once every 4 years and try to, steer people in the right direction. We are all residents. What matters to you matters to us as well. So that's about it for introductions, I think. Did I miss anything? No, I don't think so. So shall we kick things off? Is there any point which anybody wishes to raise on any subject under the sun? So, we have a roving mic. What we need to do, I should say, this is one of the things I forgot. Do wait for the roving mic because it's all switched on and ready to go. The reason why we asked for the mic is that we've got people,
Of course.
as many as 8, watching at home, and they need you to be speaking into the mic so that they can hear what's going on.
No, they're equally important, right? Okay, I'm Neil Mabin, and I'm here for the Alberts Community Association and also in a personal capacity to ask a question. The increased scale and visually unsympathetic and inconsistent design and altered light distribution of the replacement street lighting in Albany Passage have caused clear harm to the character and appearance of the St Matthias Conservation Area, engaging the Council's Section 72 duty. So I've got 4 quick questions. First of all, what decision-making process led to a specification that differed materially from what residents were told in writing would be installed, and how was the Council's Section 72 duty considered in that process? The second question is, when will I receive a formal acknowledgement and a substantive response to my Section 72 representation of the 19th of January? And the third question is, will the Council commit to reviewing this installation and, if harm is confirmed, replacing the columns with the appropriate Groveland units? And finally, would councillors be willing to attend a short site visit to see directly the scale, design mismatch and lighting impact of the new installation?
Excellent, thank you. Before I bring in Councillor Raymond, this is a very good case in point, because what we have here is a very specific issue that's relating to one area, but I would say the vast majority of people in the room are not particularly, and this is not meant to sound disrespectful, interested in a particular subject, but they may have lots of views on lighting in the borough in general. So if you do have views on lighting in borough in general, and the general principles, absolutely, all of these things which are encompassed therein, this is what we're here to hear about. But Alex is going to answer some of the specifics now.
Well, I'll do my best. I don't have all of the answers to all of your detailed questions to hand, I'm afraid, but I know that through Councillor Varley, who I think you've been in touch with, those issues have been raised with me, and as recently as today, I've raised them with the principal officers involved in the scheme. That officer doesn't work on a Monday, and therefore I have to wait for him to come back to me on the detailed answers to those. All I'd say is I perfectly well understand the concerns that you've expressed. The preliminary response I've had to date has indicated that there was a judgment made about lamp columns that could actually be installed given the site dynamics here in terms of weight loads and in terms of the layout and display of light. That is, you can shake your head, sir, but that is, I'm telling you the feedback I've received to date. What I've said to officers is I want to see in a bit more detail the thinking and the decision-making that they've made, because that hasn't been decision-making I've been principally involved with. And if there is a cause for reconsideration and the preferred lighting columns that you want are deliverable, then I give you my reassurance that that is what we'll work towards.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns regarding lighting in the borough? Sir?
Just one thing.
Just wait for the mic, please, sir.
I hadn't prepared this, but do you have any responsibility for the lighting on 316 opposite the entrance to Deer Park car park? You know, we go to the theatre, come here. And it's very difficult for elderly people like myself to clearly spot where the entrance to the car park is because it's so dark.
So, yeah, no, we don't. That's a Transport for London Road. However, the reason it's so dark is because, as was reported to me on Friday, and I reported it that day, the lights are actually out in that section. And in fact, I walked through it on the way here today and chased it up with relevant officers who agree that they'll be taking it up with TfL today, if not tomorrow.
Okay, anything further on lighting in the borough? Yes, sir.
Sorry, I'm muting the...
That's all right.
Thanks. And English is not my, or British is not my first language, so I'm sorry for this, but I write something in order to not to be that thoughtful. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me opportunity to speak. My name is Anil Körpınar. I live in East Sheen. I'm a parent of 2 young children, and I'm not here just to complain about traffic, but to speak about growing failure in local infrastructure that's not directly harming daily life, education, health, and safety in our community. Every morning, me and my kids are waiting in the Mortlake level crossing, which from my perspective, I'm a civil engineer, by the way, I'm a finance guy now, but I know the traffic conditions, the infrastructure things. So we are waiting between 6 to 9 minutes. By the way, I'm counting every day right now and putting into an Excel that each detail of my stop there, like how many cars are waiting, around how many people are there, how many minutes did we wait, how many trains have passed that we need to wait for them. So every day we are waiting between 6 to 9 minutes, while between 3 to 6 trains, which is a big number. 3 is the half of 6, and 6 is the twice number of 3. So 9 minutes. That may sound trivial on paper, but in peak time, 9 minutes is the difference between a child arriving at school calmly and arriving late, stressed, embarrassed. Because we are all stressed in the car that we can meet the schedule or what. We don't know. So this is a structural daily bottleneck we have, and for the 20th century road infrastructure trying to coexist with 21st century rail frequency and population density. So the result is predictable and measurable. Persistent morning queues with people, buses routinely missing schedules, parents building 20, 30 times, buffers into schools, which is quite a big time. So these are the things. So I need some we are asking for me as a parent for more basic and more reasonable solutions, like a transparent, data-driven. It's not all infrastructure solutions, but data-driven ones. Somebody needs to count the trains, their schedules. Even sometimes, I don't know how is it made in here, but you need to be giving penalties to the train company as well, because if they are late, then there will be a huge bottleneck there. So barrier down durations is also important, and signaling conditions. Whether barrier closures can be consolidated rather than fragmented into multiple short closures. Whether timetable smoothing or micro-adjustment could materially reduce cumulative closure times. Short-term traffic engineering mitigations around queue spillbacks and junction blocking, and vice versa. I also provide Mr. Alexander Ahman. Did I say it correct? I can't see it. I'm sorry, I didn't bring my glasses. So some solutions, some relatively modern solutions to the problem. I'm not expecting the next week you will be building a big bridge there, but it will definitely be taking time. But there are short-term, mid-term, and long-term solutions for that. That's why I took this word from you. Thanks for your time, listening to me, and everybody.
If I might, thank you. So look, I thank you very much for giving me this submission, which I've only had a chance to glance at so far. But I think, look, the first thing to say is that I totally acknowledge the point that you're making, not just in relation to Mortlake, level crossings across the borough. They are major severance points, actually for two key users of the road network, and also for our aspirations for public transport infrastructure. The two, by definition, clash. What I would say is that while we'll continue to press the relevant authorities from South West Railway Network Rail to look for improvements to their scheduling, to their timetables, I have had impressed on me over the many years now that I've been transport chair by those agencies, by those bodies, that there isn't sort of yield within their timetables to materially alter the downtimes. They're restricted by obviously safety considerations, primarily in relation to when those gates come down, but I will again press and see whether or not in the fullness of time further things can be delivered. The only thing I'd say, at the risk of prejudicing what might come out from our first-of-a-kind transport strategy that we're working on, which is shortly to be reported, which is a 2040, a longer-term look, is that one of the things that we're wanting to tackle within there or address is severance in general. And so one of the severance issues, whether it's road or rail or river in this case, need to have solutions. And I think to your point, while the short-term yields may be quite limited actually, the long-term solution is to look at different infrastructure at these locations. That will not, however, be cheap, that will not, however, be easy, and it will not, however, be quick. But I do think, nonetheless, if we're to unleash the potential of our public transport network and also allow people like yourself to be going about their business in a better way than they have before, then that investment will be necessary. But I'll look in detail at your response. Thank you.
Absolutely. Anybody that's has any experience of Hammersmith Bridge since 2018 will know that the words quick, easy and cheap don't feature in the Department for Transport's vocabulary. Now, this is part of an interactive online extravaganza, which is we sometimes ask people to chip in from online. And Melissa's going to tell us a comment which has come through on this subject.
No, that's on a different subject.
Oh, sorry. I thought this was... I only go with what's on my notes, but what is what we're going to be talking about?
So there's two questions, but
Yes.
I'll ask the first one and then you can ask me if you want the next question. But the first one is, my children love the upgrades which have been done to the playgrounds around the borough. Now that they're teenagers, what facilities is the council planning?
Okay, one for you.
So, yes, I'll take this one. It's a really good point, and we are aware of the need to have fun, interesting things for teenagers to do. As I'm a parent of 3 teenagers, so I do know, for example, that they would like to have more basketball, other things like that. Sometimes it is just quiet space in parks, but it's certainly something that we will be looking to do more of. We have various community groups looking at championing and seeking funding for basketball court provision. But I'm very mindful of my colleague Nancy's words that when we're asked a question like this that we don't have all the answers to, because I'm not a teenager anymore, sadly, that we do invite that contribution from the people who are asking us the questions, because often the person asking the question has got some ideas of what it is that would be successful. So if I may pose that back again, please do come forward with your suggestions and locations where you think there is a lack of provision for teenagers of any sort. You know, maybe it's more robust and adventurous equipment. Maybe it's a different sport that I've not thought of. I'm sure I don't have all the answers.
Excellent. Is the second point about, is it related to the first? Because if not, I've got a hand raised, which may be.
No, it's not. It's unrelated.
Unrelated. Is this regarding play equipment within the borough?
Just things for teenagers to do. So I work at Kew Gardens and we have a vibrant youth programme, and that ranges, you can join at 14 years old and that takes you right the way through to 18 years old. And it's for our local boroughs only, so it doesn't go any wider than that. And there's a summer programme and there's a programme which they can attend on a weekly basis, and there's also the youth forum where they can attend on a monthly basis, and we've just introduced our first youth council as well, so that's young people from 17 until 21, and they sit alongside the Kew trustees. So there's a vibrant youth offer at Kew Gardens if anybody wants something for their teenagers to do. And of course in the borough we've got Heatham House, which is fantastic.
It is.
Indeed.
Thank you. Did I spot a hand up in the corner over there regarding this subject, or one from this gentleman? Is this on the subject of teenage activities? Yes, sir. Gentleman down here in the room. There we are.
Rather a lot of young people got moderately good at tennis by bouncing a ball against a wall. And I do wonder if a nice high wall, perhaps with a grid, might be quite a useful piece of equipment to incorporate at these leisure sites. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cambridge, a microphone is winging its way.
Thank you very much. I loved hearing about Kew Gardens then, and you mentioned Heatham House. You asked Councillor Eden what's about what perhaps young people might want to do. I remember when I was looking through the full programme that they offer at Heatham House, you know, there's Easter activities, there's a long list of summer activities. When I saw archery, yes, slightly worried me, but yes. And I also see, do I not, that paddle courts are coming soon. And I think that is something which is being taken up by sort of 16 plus at a massive rate. So yeah, I hope we do have some good things. And Heatham House has an amazing programme, all available online.
And Councillor Baldwin is wishing to get in now?
I love this question, I really do, because I raised my children in this borough and I realized I missed out on so many things. There's so much going on for teenagers. There's all the drama groups, there's combination dance, there's all of these things. And you can look online for these things. AFC provides a lot of summer programs. It's not as easy as just taking them to the playground anymore, I'll grant you that. And there were times that I felt I should just put a taxi thing on the top of my car. But yeah, there are a lot of activities, but it takes a little bit of research to do that. And if you have other ideas, please let us know.
Yep. Councillor Millard?
We're all chipping in now. That list got me going, and I just remembered, that we're so excited that this borough has fantastic musical heritage, and we're really dedicated to celebrating that, and that being a spur to all the wonderful provision there is, like Richmond Music Trust and their wonderful bandit courses, which is about getting talented teenagers together to create bands, to write music. They've got Basement Door and all these other wonderful things.
Lady there.
Thank you. These all sound fantastic. Do you have to pay for them, or are they free? And if they're not free, then what free provision is there for more deprived families?
Who'd like to say that? Councillor Cambridge? This lady again.
Mike's coming.
That's an incredibly good question, and I think parents and carers are looking at the economics of this. Are you talking about Q again?
And we were actually means tested and received some discount for through the invoices.
I was going to say there's some we have somebody from this area there. No, I mean we have some wonderful charities like Power Jam, who are of course in Heatham House, subsidised places. The AFC offer at Heatham House. Yes, there is a small charge, but again, there's all sorts of caveats and subsidies to that. So I hope it's being kept at a low cost.
Thank you. Before I bring in the people at the back, I've got Peter Willen, who's the chair of the Richmond Music Trust.
Yes, I'm chair of the Richmond Music Trust, and I can say it's a wonderful organisation. We have over 2,000 children, and a number of the activities are free, and others are means tested. Anybody can join up, and we welcome as many as possible, because it really is fantastic to get the children doing these things, and they thoroughly enjoy it. So thank you for the various questions.
Excellent. Ladies at the back, and then I'll come to the lady over on the this far side.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Emma. It's been quite a while since I was a teenager, and I would imagine that what I used to like as a teenager is going to be very different to what teenagers like today. The world's changed, hasn't it? Have we thought about asking them? So if I look around the room at the moment, there are no young people here. I feel I'm young here, and I'm not even that young. Do you see my point? So I think we need to try and bring them into the conversation and ask them what they want, not try and make decisions for them.
Yeah, we do, Judy.
Well, indeed, that was part of my motivation in popping that question back to the questioner, because they may be a young person, they may have young people around, as I do, to ask. And that's where my point about basketball came from, is because I am lobbied on a regular basis by young people for more of that. But, there are other young people out there, and we do run young people's surveys on a regular basis, but even then we may only be reaching certain young people and not others. So that's probably something we should look at. And I wonder if my colleague, who's the young person chair, I was going to say, chair of Education and Children's Services.
Absolutely right, Julia. And I'm not sure who was asked that. We have an amazing youth council in the borough, and their voices are amplified, they are listened to, and they are heard. We also have our wonderful Children in Care Council as well. And believe me, AFC do produce those youth strategy reports, and they are centred around the voices of young people. That's where they're coming from, not people my age, and it's really important.
Okay, we have Councillor Mansfield wishes to come in once we've just heard from the lady in the corner.
Yes, my question was about what the strategy is for consultation with young people, and I believe she's outlined threads of that, but how that joins up with schools, etc. But also about how that information is shared. What is the strategy for ensuring that young people have access to the kind of provision that's available and the kind of support that is available? And do you focus on schools, communicating through schools, social media? You know, what is your strategy?
Jude? I mean, one of the strategies that we have is that Heatham House, which was mentioned earlier, is a very good way of disseminating information about what is out there to our young people. It sounds terribly old-fashioned, but a poster on the wall saying, "Are you aware that this thing is happening on Thursday evening?" is worth its weight in gold. So we do try as much as we possibly can. We do things through the youth councils, and yes, we do try to reach out to schools so that they're as kept as well informed of things which are available for them. And this might not be something which is necessarily for, the older teenager, but for example, we do the book challenge every summer holiday, and that gets sent out through all of the schools, and it really gets young people reading and encourages them to read. So there are so many mechanisms by which we can reach out, but if you have any suggestions, do make sure that you let us know. Councillor Cambridge.
We have a children and young people's plan, so the voices of schools, the voices of children are embedded into that. I don't know if people are asked to give their email addresses and whether we can send you a link to that or make that available, but it's an important document.
Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you. I think it's something that we are very conscious of in terms of speaking to young people. And when we were looking at the work for Richmond Town Centre, it's one of the key things that we did. It's very hard to get young people to speak to us. So what we did was we went into the schools and we got feedback from them. But we also set up on Richmond Green in the evening to go where young people were spending time and interview them and try and get their feedback. We had some really honest feedback from some of the young people there. I believe Councillor Giesler did the same for the nighttime strategy in terms of what young people want. We go in where we can to where young people are to listen to them and to get their feedback.
Thank you. But I did a thing recently for one of the scout groups, and they were discussing the importance of voting at 16. And they said, what's the point of us going to vote at 16? I said, well, the important thing is that people of my age get lots given to us by government because we go out and vote. We make our voices heard. We tell people what we want. And then we go out and vote and say, yes, please. So that's why it's important to get young people talking to us as much as possible so that people like us can give them the provisions that they require. Gentleman there in the second row. Is this on this subject, sir? Good.
It's sort of. There's often with young people's activities and other community activities, there's a sort of concern about lack of space to do things. And one of the things that I've kind of realised, and we're doing something about in Barnes, is that the pubs actually often have a lot of space nowadays because people are not perhaps going to them as often, and maybe at certain times. They could be very busy at the weekend or whatever, and the rugby's on. There's a pub in Peckham called the Pride of Peckham. The chap who runs it just won an OBE in the News Honours List. And they've really focused on the pub becoming a community hub. And it's serving young people. And obviously, when I was growing up, children didn't go into pubs. I mean, I started at 16, obviously. But now children are much, so you go to the Pride of Peckham and you've got, children going after school, and it's just kind of a multifunctional community hub, and it's absolutely zinging along. In Barnes, we're just starting an initiative tomorrow night, which is called the Tuesday Local, and it's just for people who want to go, maybe you don't know, there's no expectation of anyone, but it's in the bull's head. And it's going to be every single Tuesday, so people could just go if they want to have someone to talk to. They don't have to talk about anything particular or anything at all. And they know there's someone, and the landlord's going to start something on the Monday in the afternoon. She just had a child. She said, I've never felt lonely. I didn't know this was going to happen to me. So it's going to be a Monday afternoon thing. So I'm just pointing out really that pubs are spaces that have perhaps lost their way. We're hearing a lot about them at the moment. And that could be an opportunity locally, and I would encourage everyone to think about what you can do to support your local pubs. I wonder what the council's doing to support local pubs.
Well, I try single-handedly to support.
He's doing a good job.
If you can give us, if you can let us know the details, we'll see whether we can feature this in our community newsletter, because this is exactly the sort of thing that we want to try to encourage people to get involved with. But yes, I mean, we have a motion, by the way, tomorrow at full council about the importance not just of the business rates issue for pubs, but also for hospitality, for cafes, for independent restaurants and stuff like that. And I know that Councillor Giesler, I don't know if you wish to say anything on the subject about the importance of independent businesses such as that to the borough's nighttime economy, which you've done a lot of work on.
Yeah, I mean, a few comments actually, and Councillor Mansfield mentioned that. Yes, we did a lot of work on the nighttime economy last year, and we consulted with an awful lot of young people, and a lot of the feedback we were getting was exactly the sort of thing you were saying, that needing options away from alcohol, if you like, and needing suggestions. So a lot of ideas coming out of that going forward as well. I think on the broader subject of pubs at the moment, yes, we obviously have seen some losses. We have actually seen a number of good examples of where community pubs have been brought back. There's one at the moment in South Twickenham, the Rifleman, that's now looking at options, the Lion in Hampton Wick as well. And both of them are looking at solutions which are beyond the norm in the community, so we're really encouraging that. That said, of course, we're also very much aware of the issues that pubs and hospitality are facing at the moment from a lot of volatility in their business rates, which has not been held by the government, and a lot of pubs and hospitality are literally on the edge at the moment. So we're obviously encouraged by some of the changes the government's looking at, but it needs to go much, much more broadly. We need much more predictability in terms of how business rates and valuations are looked at, and that's something we're looking to lobby far more on.
Yes, you can. And then I'm going to ask this lady over there in the corner, so if you just want to come back on that specific point, if you can make it short, and that lady...
Because I was talking about, obviously, young people, and we've moved on to business, which is brilliant. So the question I emailed in, actually, was about business, but it was a kind of at the other end, which is about starting up or requiring affordable workspace.
Yeah. Well, hold that thought for the moment, because I'm not sure whether we've drained all of the juice out of this particular subject, and that lady was wishing to come in, and it'd be a bit of a messy segue, and Councillor Raymond wishes to come in, but I'll make sure that you get to come back in. Yes?
Hello, it was actually along that line, interesting the business rates thing, because I'll bring that up later. Is there like a hub or a forum where the council actually have sort of something that people can log on to the website and they can see what is happening for children? So is there something where independent companies could actually submit their weekly things so that someone could go on and see a timetable of what is happening on certain days and certain times? Because that might be a really good way of communicating it to people, so that people could go to one place, maybe look at age groups, and actually you could have a timetable of what's happening daily, and you could have independent companies, and the council could reach out to companies to do it. I mean, one thing I would say is I feel like the communication between the council and everyone is pretty lacking. Kind of even, I'm a local business owner, and even down to kind of this, it was actually Chris coming into the shop directly to give me something. Otherwise I wouldn't have known, and the only reason that is because he's one of my clients. So sort of, I think that the communication between council and people is sorely lacking, just from my perspective.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baldwin is going to...
Well, thank you for the feedback, because virtually all the officers you see standing behind you are communications officers, so, so we do need to know that. I hear what you're saying, and a calendar would be good, and that's what I'm saying. In some ways, sometimes we have to piece things together. So, for example, we have a community newsletter that you can sign up to. Are you signed up to it? Every time you go onto our borough website, the very first pop-up you see is, are you signed up to our community newsletter? And you click on that, and there's like, I think, what is there, Sarah, is there like 10 newsletters, depending on what your particular interest area is? So, I mean, so we do have that. Is that perfect? No, I'm not saying it is, and so there is that. But there is also, we have Visit Richmond, and that is literally a monthly calendar that comes out of everything that's happening in Richmond, whether it's concerts or performances or all the different sporting groups mention their fixture lists. Everybody is in there. And you can pick that up either from the library, but you don't have to get a hard copy. You can go online, visit Richmond, and it's all there. Ted Lasso tour is still apparently very popular. So, I mean, so there are a lot of things. Can we do better? The answer is yes. The lady I'm looking at right back there, she's making notes for me. So if you want to talk to us later, we can do some more on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Raymond.
Yeah, it's just a small thing in parentheses compared to the others. I think what I was going to say is I know that all of my colleagues are doing all that they can, although I'm sure we can always do more to try and engage with young people. But I think one of the other things to recognise is that the young people that live in this borough also live in one of the greatest, if not arguably the greatest city in the world. And actually part of what we have to do is we have to provide them with the transport infrastructure that enables them to use it all. Not everything has to be delivered in Richmond, though we may like them to be able to access quite a lot of what they can on their doorstep. And that's about supporting public transport infrastructure, which we continue to do, and also active travel, because we have to remember that many of these young people are overly reliant on the taxi service of mum and dad. And actually giving them freedom and empowerment is about them being able to get on a bicycle or on a piece of public transport and go to a different part of London and experience different things, maybe even Peckham, as you referred to, sir. But I think it's a really important part of the picture in terms of allowing them to access this global city and their independence.
So, is this on the same subject? Yeah, excellent. It's rushing to terrible on your left and your right.
Yeah, you've talked about the sort of public transport and stuff. Obviously, you've got your 2040 transport strategy coming out very soon. I just wanted to sort of find out if Crossrail 2 is going to feature on that.
It will be mentioned within the report, or at least the draft version that I've seen makes mention of it. I think that all I'd say about that scheme is that something perhaps a bit more abstract, which is that while we're supportive of any transport infrastructure that can benefit the borough, including that scheme, I think that actually one of the things we do quite poorly about, and I look to Gareth to maybe make a comment on this too, but is I don't think that this borough gets its fair share of major capital investment. A premise of the report is basically that we are nursing Victorian-style infrastructure in this borough, where other bits of London are very much 21st century. Now, that's partially because other bits of London didn't have the infrastructure to begin with and have been given a sort of steady lift up in recent years. But I think, a core component of what's driving the 2040 strategy is trying to better articulate what this borough needs, where its severance points are, where its connectivity issues are, and to help to propagate further proposals for significant capital investment of a local, of a sub-regional, of a London, and of a national level that can really benefit our residents. So Crossrail will feature, but I hope it's not the first and the last significant scheme to feature in the report, because I think that would be rather pedestrian.
Thank you. Gentleman here.
Well, thank you very much. My name's Richard Wolfe. Can I just bring up the issue of local connectivity?
Bridge, perhaps?
For the past 50 years, there's been a scheme to build a cycle and footbridge between Ham and Twickenham.
Yeah.
Now, we know that there was an initial report on that, and many residents are looking forward to seeing the second part of that report, which will then identify if a foot and cycle bridge would actually be valuable.
So, I'm trying to think of what a sort of short distilled response would be, because it's a complicated issue. I think the really short answer is, personally, I'm all for it. Couldn't get enough of it, frankly, as my colleagues know. I think the challenge is that it is a significant capital-intensive scheme. Wherever it's sited, it's not going to be cheap. And what we have to do, particularly in the environment which Jim will no doubt get onto if asked a question about it, but in an environment where we are facing very, very significant financial constraints from the government's funding settlement in future years, will be to prioritise where we can spend money. And the challenge is that if we allocate significant amounts of money to what are revenue measures, to exploring in further detail the potential to deliver this scheme, if we don't have the capital committed ready to deliver it if it proves deliverable, then actually that would be a rather wasteful use of taxpayers' money. So the challenge is reconciling a real envelope of financial funding that can deliver such a scheme. The principle of it, I think, across the board, I don't know colleagues on this bench that would be against the idea of delivering such a scheme, but I'm not sure that we have the capital at present to fund it.
So, do I take it then that the scheme would be supported if the financial implications were known?
I think not the financial implications were only known.
So if one would
but if
say...
if the financial implications were known and could be met by this council...
Fine, so it's just a money issue?
It is fundamentally a money issue, as most things are. I mean, building a new bridge is not a capital-light activity.
No, but if this was Holland, we'd have 6 bridges across between different parts and we'd get around the borough. Money can be found. It's the political will to find it.
I appreciate that, but I think the question would be what you would have us not do in order to fund probably a multi-million-pound investment of that nature.
Gentleman there.
Are we going to go back to this gentleman who's been
We will, but... excuse me a moment. Who's chairing this, Nancy?
Oh, I know, we have this conversation all the time. It's all right, I'm fine, I'm back in my chair now.
A question from North Twickenham. In the absence of adequate transport facilities to the RFU Stadium in Twickenham, how do we feel about granting the RFU permission to hold 15 evening concerts there with 75,000 people attending each one?
I would love to be able to answer that question. However, it is the subject of a live planning application, and therefore it would be remiss of us to comment in a public forum on it. We have to be Caesar's wife on this one. We have to be above suspicion, and we cannot comment in either way which may prejudice a live planning application. I do apologise. It's just the way things are.
The only thing I would say, I'm not going to veto that, but obviously, Alec can of course, see the remarks I made at licensing committee as a ward councillor to understand my views on the matter.
Thank you. Are we still within the sphere of... Well, we started on young people. We moved into... I appreciate it. We moved into young people. We sort of veered into traffic. Are we still... and transport. Are we still in these areas, or are these new points? Same... The stadium. We're going to take a brief detour on the stadium. We cannot answer specifics on the stadium application. Oh, if you get the microphone.
Can you tell us what the timeline on the planning process is?
I don't have the detail to hand. As soon as we have the final dates, we will be publishing them because we want people to be able to have their say.
What we do know, sorry Gareth, is that my understanding is that the planning application will now be heard before a licensing application is heard.
Yeah. Just on the topic, could you just tell us the process that we're currently at on planning? It's raised just short of 200 objections, formal objections from residents, and it would be very good to understand where we are in terms of process and what the various steps of a potential planning application would be, please.
Right, so I'm going to try and address process only without going into the detail of it. However, as has been pointed out, one of the key aspects that planners will be looking at and are looking at is the impact on the transport network, Twickenham Station, the highways network, as well as many other environmental factors, pros and cons of the scheme, as you would with any planning application. This is a big deal. There'll be a lot of reports to go through. I don't know whether all the reports are in. My understanding was some time ago that further reports were required. Conversations with TfL and other transport providers were expected, and that's all going through the process. So I don't think it's going to be imminent, but I don't know exactly what the timescale is. I'd just point out, again, with any planning application, it's not the number of objectors that count, it's the material quality of those objections. So they must pertain to material planning considerations, and you can go and look on the website to see what things those are. But there are impacts on neighbours, impacts on highways, environmental impacts, and so on. And when the time comes when this is an application that would be likely to go to committee because of its nature, then there is the opportunity for members of the public, ward councillors, to register to speak to the planning committee. That's the procedural aspect of it. But if you've got any further questions, then You know where our email addresses are, and we can ask officers to address any points that you raise.
Okay, thank you. Gentlemen.
Okay, whilst we're on the subject of Twickenham Stadium, during events at the stadium, often London Road is closed for safety reasons. The junction with London Road, York Street and King Street is controlled by traffic lights. And what happens is that the phase that allows traffic to flow towards Richmond goes fine, and then the phase that goes down London Road, everything stops and backs up to Twickenham Green. Is there any way of I'm going to the rugby ground meeting tomorrow. Is there any way of getting them to get the private traffic people to either turn off the traffic lights and control it manually so that traffic can flow through, because it would reduce pollution, congestion, the angry motorists, etc.
We have asked. The issue is, sorry, it was TFL. Sorry.
I did take Councillor Mansfield as Ward Councillor, and then we can come to you.
Yeah, so this is something a number of residents have raised, and it's something we've raised with the RFU. They have been speaking to transport officers about it, and they've spoken to the police about it. It is possible. It's a resource consideration. They have to kind of put hoods over the traffic lights, and then that means they have to have somebody there directing people. So it's something that we continue to push on, because I think it's an absolutely essential idea. It is exactly what causes the traffic build up in Twickenham. So we'll keep pushing. Absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond?
No, well, there's nothing much to add to that. It's just to say that the lights are TfL's responsibility. The stewarding sits with CSP, the contractor of the RFU. The challenge is that neither are willing to sort of acknowledge the ability of the other to act on their infrastructure, particularly CSP are worried about health and safety of their officers going up, bagging over the particular light column. But it is something that's been raised by ward councillors, and we'll continue to press on it.
Okay, right. I'm seeing lots of hands going off. I saw this later. Is this pertaining to transport, traffic lights, young people still? We haven't left that subject.
I wanted to swap to the really rock and roll subject of dustbins.
We haven't yet moved off this, because I've got a flurry of hands, so keep dustbins in mind.
Okay.
The perennial dustbins. Roger Beck up at the back, is this on this, or?
Councillor Roberts to move on to community safety.
Community safety, when the time comes, yes, is this on this?
I've got two questions, one on transport a little bit, and the other one is on housing.
Ask the one on transport very quickly, if we can.
So this one is about speed cameras. So when can we expect speed cameras on Strawberry Vale? Drivers know there are no cameras and act accordingly.
So speed cameras are not a piece of infrastructure, a piece of infrastructure the council have the ability to deploy. That is solely within the preserve of the police in conjunction with TfL. None have been deployed in many, many years across London, and so the prospect of any such cameras being deployed on Strawberry Vale is, I'm afraid to say, under present arrangements, next to zero. That doesn't, just as a parenthesis, just to say, the council would be very keen to have powers relating to speed enforcement activity, and have made that point in various forums before, but as things stand at the moment, we have no powers as a local authority to enforce speed.
It's also worth bearing in mind that as part of the so-called tough choices within the Metropolitan Police, the community speed watch schemes are now not necessarily going to be receiving the funding that they did, because of all of the cuts which are coming down the line from City Hall. Right, I've got lots of hands which are sort of moving around. Before anybody raises their hands, I know we've got bins, I know we've got business, I know we've got community safety there. Are these ones which are over here about young people and transport?
What is your strategy on Lime bikes?
Ah.
What, if any, liaison do you have with other London boroughs on that
Well,
side?
that's all very kind. That's all we've got time for this evening. We're all going.
I didn't hear the back end of the question.
What's your opinion on line bikes?
Line bikes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we could have a community conversation on probably on e-bike mobility itself. The position of the council is, as stands, is that we have those services operating in the borough to very high levels of utilisation. They're of course not without negative impacts for some road users too. So we're cognizant of both those things. They provide a really, really useful tool for a lot of our residents, but they also, due to particularly inconsiderate parking, they cause challenges to many other users. What's our plan? Our plan is that we have undertaken now a new procurement exercise to understand of the providers that operate these services who would like to operate in the borough. A big feature of that procurement exercise is to focus on what a new or alternative or existing provider, whoever the winning providers are, can do to improve on the behaviours that are having negative impacts. That's a major factor within the procurement process, as well as looking at other factors relating to their operation, including their availability, their price, and so on. So I think it would be fair to say that the view of my colleagues and the council is that these are a really important part of the picture, particularly in parts of the borough that suffer from weaker public transport infrastructure and with no immediate prospect of additional funding for that infrastructure, so there's a supplemental benefit from them. But we need to do what we can to ensure that they cause less harm to other users than they presently do. Part of that, just to say, is about the rollout of parking bays dedicated to their use, but I would caution slightly against feeling that that is a silver bullet, because the challenge with these is that unless you provide enough of them, they're never going to be preferable for people. They're never as preferable as a free float model where people can park wherever they like, of course, because you have to go somewhere away from your eventual destination. And critically, as those of you that will commute into other bits of London will see, even in areas where those bays are mandatory and the only model, there is still significant harm from clustering around them and indeed in other places. So it doesn't all but eliminate the harm. The last thing to say as well is, of course, turning over parking spaces to that use means the loss of parking spaces, which many residents will also find difficult to cope with. So that we are attempting to balance what is an additional tool and mode of transport within a constrained basic public realm in Richmond. I'm interested in views about the same, but it is important to underline, because I think possibly users might be underrepresented in this room, I may be wrong, but there is a very, very strong usage of them within the borough that we can't ignore.
Okay, I'm conscious that we spent a lot of time on that particular subject. And I know that I'm going to upset people, such is the nature of my job on a daily basis. I have to walk this particular tightrope. But we've got business, we've got bins, we've got bobbies to talk about, we've got something else which my memory doesn't quite dredge up, which was online. So we're going to park, if you'll pardon the pun, the transport issues, and we're going to move on to the issue of business. If we have time at the end, well, we can come back to this. So.
Yeah, my name's Charles Campion. I didn't say that earlier from Barnes. Business. Line bikes are really fantastic in Barnes for business, I must say. And the thing I was going to say is the lack of affordable business space. I mean, it's just non-existent. If you want to go from kitchen table to the next step, you can't possibly afford it locally. There are certain things, certain forms of business. My wife's a psychotherapist, for example. She would love to have space. It would help her business. It would actually help the clients as well in certain instances. Totally impossible. I mean, the cost of the space would be the cost of the session. So it would be completely, from a business point of view, not worthwhile. And they just don't exist. I did a bit of research. There's a place I worked on up near Luton, Central Beds. There's a community centre. They provide fantastic space for therapy, and they charge £6 an hour to the therapists. So I just wondered what the strategy was throughout the borough, not just in Barnes. But I think it's incredibly important. And again, we were talking about young people who more and more, in my experience, want to set up their own business. They see it as their way to their future. So just really the strategy.
Yeah. Charles, it's a very good point you raise, and we know there's an awful lot of demand, and in fact we have, of course, tried to meet that demand in a number of areas, particularly Twickenham, where we've managed to open the Patch Centre. And of course, it's a commercial operation, but we've had tremendous demand through that model. We've also managed to, with partners, look at the similar opportunities in Richmond, and I know in Teddington as well. But I am interested in working on other options, and maybe we could talk more about that, because I do think that the demand for business space is going up and up at the moment. We know And in fact, our upcoming growth plan is focusing very much on entrepreneurs. We know how many entrepreneurs there are in the borough who really want to use it. So it's something that I would welcome fresh ideas on how we might actually move towards that kind of model in certain places. Certainly, also you mentioned community centres, and that's certainly something I think we would like to pursue further. But I think it's also something that I'd be keen in that area to work with in partnership with business providers as well. I don't think as a council we can just take all the responsibility ourselves on subsidy, but I think there could be commercial partners out there as well who would actually want to help us. We run a number of programs as well for small business, which have been tremendously successful in terms of how many businesses they've helped. So our Phoenix Enterprise program, again, has had lots of subscriptions coming through, and that's really helped. But increasingly, we're looking at sponsors to help us in that area as well, and some of the big banks are quite interested in that. So I do think there's some innovative ideas we could talk about further, and maybe we should have some further conversations about it. I'm keen to hear your views more.
Okay, thank you. I've got a lady at the back there.
Hello. So obviously we all know that Richmond as a whole, there are so many shops closing down. Not even the larger businesses can make it work. I mean, H&M obviously shut down. We've got M&S changing. Russell and Bromley, I know they're closing things down, but at the moment there are so many vacant properties. I know that you don't necessarily have any say with private landlords, but there must be something more to do to help Richmond gain a better identity, because we are not going to be a Westfield, we're not going to be a Kingston. We need small and medium-sized businesses here. But the problem is, the council and the rates and the rents outprice everyone. It's virtually impossible to start as a small or medium business here unless you have experience in Richmond, and it's killing the high street. And I feel like there's got to be something that the council can do, even if it's down to, and I don't know how you implement this, but if you can somehow make sure that those properties are actually being used, like something to encourage small and medium businesses in, because it's really, really difficult to get in and survive beyond your 6-month rent-free period here.
I'm sure Councillor Giesler will have something to say. Katie Mansfield, I'm sure, has something to say on this, particularly Richmond.
Yeah, I mean, it is obviously one of the things we're looking at with regard to Richmond Town Centre. There are constraints. Private landlords own buildings and we can't just walk in. We've looked at everything we can do with regard to liaising with the private landlords, and we are having conversations with some of them with regard to the use of the space that is there that can be used. The vacancy rate isn't actually that high in the town centre. It's only 7%, which in terms of the country is very, very low. But some of the things that we know we need to look at are the kind of community spaces in the town centre, the ability for markets and being able to let people have opportunities that are outside of the standard landlord spaces. And that's key to some of the work that we're looking at the moment. So some of the stuff like Whitaker Square, in terms of outdoor use of it, we're looking at how you can make it so that you can have market stalls there much more on an ongoing basis, so that there's power and water and things like that to enable it. That's what we can do, is we can help create the space that people can come into. We can't change the structure of landlords because of the nature of them owning that space, but we're also looking at what we can do with the landlords when there is vacant space. I mean, it is interesting, Russell and Bromley has actually been leased now. We don't know who to at this point in time. It's all being kept under wraps, but it is something that the places are being actively marketed by the landlords, so we aren't able to step in and make any changes there. But certainly in terms of other spaces and the use of space across the town centre, the outdoor space and the use of space, we're working with them on it.
Okay. I mean, just a tangential thing which is really useful to us as a council is when you see programmes like Ted Lasso and The Night Manager actually referencing the fact that they are going to Richmond. Because people see it on the telly and think, oh, that looks lovely, I'll go along there. And it draws people in, and the more that we can sell and actually say, look, Richmond, great place to come, the more it will benefit businesses. Councillor Giesler.
Yeah, I'll just add in, I mean, Councillor Mansfield mentioned the point, and I just want to reiterate, vacancy rates are actually not that bad in our borough at the moment. They're between 4 and 8%, which is very, very low. We are getting churn, of course. We are getting a number of churns on businesses, but we tend to find that in many, many cases, those plots are then taken quite quickly. I'll come back to Richmond in a minute because I think there are some exceptional points about Richmond which are worth making, but I do want to emphasise that. That isn't to underestimate the struggles which we know a lot of businesses are under, and we talk to a lot of them, we work with them, and we know a lot of the pressures that they're under at the moment. But they are just about keeping their heads above water. Now, what I would also say is the events are very important for that as well. We've had quite a successful Christmas period with a lot of promotion of businesses, and our early response on that is that it's been quite a good period for many, many companies. That's gone down very well. But also in general, being able to promote. And coming back to Richmond, I mean, Richmond has issues because there are a lot of big plots. We know Whole Foods, for instance. You know, when a retailer like that goes, it's actually very, very difficult to rent out that major area. So vacancy tends to be up in those areas. As Councillor Mansfield said, there's a limit to what we can actually do. But we do also know with our high street teams and our local groups, so Be Richmond, of course, is the bid for Richmond. They've just been nominated for a prize at the National Awards on the marketing they've done to try and bring customers into the town centre. So regular programmes each month that enable greater footfall and is really having an impact. And those are the kind of things that we can do and we can influence. But I do want to estimate we aren't doing too badly, but it is a struggle at the moment, and we're doing what we can to keep our businesses' heads above water.
Okay, I've got a flurry of hands. Peter, is this about business? It is. And then I'll come to the lady with the stripes, and then the man that's next to her, because then it's easy to...
Yes, it's really, Councillor Mansfield has partly answered this, but it's a question on the town centre, Richmond Town Centre. Where are we on the project for the enhancement? Very interesting to hear. And also maybe you could also extend that into the nighttime strategy, or I like to call it the evening strategy. And there is a suggestion. We used to have a very successful group of for independence meeting every 2 or 3 months, and 90 people turned up. It was fantastic, and that I used to go along as a resident, but it was in here, and I suggest that the bid actually Phil, it kind of took that over, and I think it was so successful because it gave them a voice. And when I talked to the independent shops, the small ones in the town, I think they would really appreciate that voice.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Mansfield, where are we? Apart from Duke's Head Church.
Duke's Head. So I think just to take a step back, Peter, I know you know quite a lot of the history on this, but for everybody else in the room, just to make sure that we kind of all working to the same thing. We identified the need to really focus on Richmond Town Centre to try and create the vibrancy that we know it needs going forward. And about a year ago, I started working on it, and what we've done is we've gone and we talked about talking to young people earlier. We've gone and we've really listened to everybody, not just the young people, but the entire community, to come up with ideas of what was needed and what we needed to do. We got very, very clear feedback from everybody. We then went and we created a vision and a strategy, because actually we didn't want to just do it piecemeal. We wanted to be able to work all in the same direction towards what we wanted for Richmond, and we've been really clear on that. And then what we've done after that is that we've created a whole list of projects that can help us deliver that. And we had a very, very long list of projects that we came last summer, middle of last summer, we had about 40, 50 projects that we could consider for Richmond Town Centre. So what we've been doing over the last 6 months then is working on those projects to try and understand what the benefit they bring, what the cost would be, what the risk would be, and how all of those pieces could link together to create the town centre that we want. Now, we're in the process of that at the moment, and we're still bringing data in from various different aspects of it, but we didn't want to go too fast with the project and create the wrong things. We are bringing in at this point in time, there's some short-term projects with benefits that there will be. So we're looking at the alleyway across from the station, we're looking at the links through to Deer Park. So there are some short-term projects that we are trying to make better, and those should be coming to fruition in around March. After that, in around June time, we should have a full list of a roadmap of exactly what we want to do, what's being prioritised, talking to stakeholders and getting to the point where we know over the next 5-10 years exactly what we're going to be delivering.
Thank you. Lady there.
Hi, my name is Nadia and I work with the Ishin Business and Retail Association known as Ishin Village. And the question is regarding vacant units. So I've tried last year to contact landlords because I have a number of people who've approached me to say, can we do pop-ups? The agents, I've called all the commercial agents, they've all, ghosted me. But you as the council should have better relationships with the landlords. And a couple of things I was wondering was, if a unit has been vacant for 6 months to a year, can you actively ask them to prove that they're looking? Also, can you incentivise them so that they maybe have reduced business rates or help with other ways so that pop-ups can utilise those units and make them more attractive for their long-term tenants when they eventually come? And also, there are sometimes units that are left and they look unsightly. Can you encourage them to have a better facade? So, as a council, I'm hoping you have more leeway with the landlords. And I'm trying a different approach this year. I'm going to try and find them directly. But it would be really helpful if the council could help the small businesses, the pop-up businesses, the businesses that want to test the market before taking on a long-term lease.
Okay. Councillor Mansfield with relation to Richmond, and Councillor Giesler on a general...
Yeah, double act. Firstly, I think you're absolutely right in terms of the landlords. And one of the first things that we've done is we've gone out and we've got a list of the landlords. And that was a starting point because it's a national problem. The landlords quite often are pension funds overseas that we can't even find a UK contact for. And that's a national problem that we need to push at a legislative level on a national scale. But we have in Richmond now managed to get a list of the landlords, and we are making contact with the landlords as part of the project. In terms of the vacant units, the government recently brought in a scheme called High Street Rental Auctions that you can use to force the landlords of vacant properties to give up their space, or it goes to a rental auction for community use. That has to meet a very strict criteria in terms of the number of vacant units in a period of time. We just don't have that in Richmond Town Centre, so that isn't something that we can do at the moment. But we are going to be looking to the landlords in other ways to see how we can work with them to create the sort of space that we need. Because you're right, I mean, it's a small thing in terms of H&M or Whole Foods, but they are really having an impact on the town centre. So they're the landlords we're focused on at the moment.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Giesler.
Yeah, Councillor Mansfield's talked a lot about what I was going to mention on that. It's not, we'd hoped that it was going to be easier on the vacant land legislation. It doesn't look to be as easy. But the dialogue with landlords is quite important, and we're doing our best to do as much convening as we can where we've got landlords who are interested in talking. Some of them are proven to be very difficult and are not that interested. In fact, some are almost like saying, I don't want to reduce rents, I prefer to have a property empty because otherwise it just, it keeps my market value high. So it isn't that easy in a number of areas to try and tackle that, but we are doing what we can, I think. I wanted to come back actually, Peter, to your question. I didn't get a chance to answer that. Now, nighttime economy you mentioned. Two things that we're looking at first was priority. The first thing that came through was safety. So we're in the middle of conducting a lighting review at the moment and a lighting strategy to really identify dark spots and areas where people are feeling across the borough that safety can be improved. That's coming forward now and looking to report very soon. The second thing we've picked up, and this also relates to some of the growth work we're doing, is the creative economy work, and particularly the music economy. And this is an area that we actually want to try and promote further. We're just starting on that work now. We should talk more about that. There's a number of areas because of our history in this area where we've got a number of people coming in who are keen to look at how we can further that and how we can look at perhaps different venues and different organisations to work in. So it's just starting, but that's a lead area that we'd like to basically involve in. The other question you asked about convening, and I agree with you. What I would say, though, the bid is having in Richmond, having quite some success in convening businesses at the moment. Their networking last year was tremendously successful in terms of providing themes and bringing businesses together. And there were 2 or 3 very successful events in that area. So we're majoring on that at the moment, but there may be other things we can do as well.
And there's a gentleman there with the glasses. you were sort of, you had a hand raised, but then you were nodding along at the high street auctions. Is your case point been made?
Yes, I was going to ask about that auction facility, which Katie has explained. I'm Mike Adams. I live in the town centre in Water Lane, and as a local, I mean, the demise of retail in Richmond town centre, which started during COVID. So, for example, H&M closed in 2022. I've looked on your planning website. The last planning application there was 1975. Clearly, it's an enormous building which stretches way back into Victoria Place. It could be a hotel, it could be converted to residential. There's all sorts of things that could happen to it. It sat there like a sort of beach whale for 4 years. There's not even a to let sign on it. I think it's owned by one of the tobacco pension funds, something like that. And as a local resident, I find that the vast majority of the stores I spent money in have closed. You know, Uniqlo, COS, it goes on and on. All the clothes shops that men shop in pretty much closed. I don't spend any money in Richmond Town Centre anymore. And it's interesting because you go over Richmond Bridge to East Twickenham and you don't see the vacant units. You know, prices are more sensible. But really, Richmond needs addressing. It's not just a few stores. You know, we've lost House of Fraser, 60,000 square feet. We've got a Lindt chocolate shop. That's all we've got in retail. So, you know, if I was Richmond Council, I'd really be focusing on trying to sort out Richmond Town Centre. And I don't think it's a question of just trying to keep the retail going. The retail's gone. You need to think about other things.
Yes. So firstly...
No.
Sorry, I got distracted. You're absolutely right about retail not being the only thing in the town centre, and we have to be realistic about it. We have the shops are looking at London as a whole, and we've got Kingston nearby that has a lot of shopping, and we've got Battersea that has shopping, we've got Ealing that has shopping. We need to find what our own unique position is in that is right for us, and it won't necessarily be mirroring one of those other places. And that's what the exercise of trying to come up with what we wanted Richmond Town Centre to be was. So I think, though, that, I mean, when you talked about House of Fraser going, and then you said, can you do something about H&M in a different way? That's exactly what has happened with House of Fraser, is that Mint's head office now is in the centre of Richmond. That's a huge number of people coming onto those upper floors, but the bottom of it has been maintained for retail, whether it's Sticks and Sushi or whether it's Lindt, and that keeps the vibrancy of the town centre and brings people in who are working there above the floors. So that is absolutely the sort of things that we need to do for the town centre.
Yeah, I mean, even places like Kingston are starting to lose, you know, key shops. I noticed the other day that Superdry is closing in the Bentor Centre, which I don't mind too much, because once I went into Superdry and bought a shirt, and the one which fitted me was double XL. I could have wept, but that's my problem.
But just going back to I mean, Councillor Giesler was saying it as well, is that Richmond has, like, 7% vacancy rate in Richmond. It is not this failing high street in the sense of there are towns and centres around the country that have 40-50% vacant units, and that's where the high street rental auctions are targeted towards. We do have quite a lot of really great independent shops still within Richmond, in the lanes and places like that. So what we want to do is make it even better, but it's not a failing high street in that sense.
Okay. I've got online. Is this in relation to business?
Yes, there are 3 related comments.
Yes.
Shall I read? Yeah, okay. So the first one is, could the council structure business rates such that they are linked to business profitability with a cap and collar on charges?
Very quickly on that, Jim Millard, you are the finance person.
Well, yes. I mean, the first thing to say is that business rates are set by national government. We collect them on behalf of national government. We get to keep a small portion of them. Quite a lot goes to national government, quite a lot goes to the Mayor of London. We'll continue to lobby for fairer structuring of business rates. We think that there's a real problem with that. As an administration, we'll continue to lobby in conjunction with our MPs to make a difference there.
Okay, next question.
Next question is, regards to building development, will the council commit to ameliorate the loss of commercial space for employment, similarly the environmental impact caused?
One for Julie Needham-Watts.
Yes, it's a little unclear, but certainly our planning policies do seek to make sure that, you know, that the needs that are set out in the evidence base of the local plan and that come through in our policies, that each application that comes in will be weighed up against the balance of policies.
Yeah.
So it's a slightly technical answer, but I think the answer is yes.
If the resident has a specific in mind, then they can email us to find out more about that one. And the third.
The final question, although there's one on a separate subject, but I'll wait for you to tell me when to speak about that one. So the final comment here is, in the summer, Richmond Town Centre was amazing when it was full of people and not vehicles. When will Richmond get its own version of Twickenham Church Street?
Oh. Oh.
I can tell you the process that we're going to go through with regard to that, because it's not quite as simple as just shutting off a high street in that sense. We have to look at data in terms of what happens in the surrounding area, because there's no point in doing that and making it bad in another area, the cost that it has and the benefit that it will bring. We certainly have a programme where we did centre stage last year, and you can shut it off for a day and really make a difference on that day, and we plan to do that again this year on the 18th of July. But we can't just go ahead and do that without all of the information as to what the impact would be.
I think that's right. And I'd just add, I mean, I think the only thing to add to that is there is a need for change, though. Simply nursing the status quo is very unlikely, not least because Richmond Town Centre has a number of the air quality exceedance sites that the borough faces. And so, frankly, you know, from my perspective, from a transport perspective, some level of traffic change is going to be essential to the transformation.
Okay, right, business, we're still on business. I know you've had your hand up for a while, but we've heard a couple of bits, so I just want to see from one person that we haven't heard. Is this on business? Yes! Then, if we get the chance, I'll come back to you.
Hi, Andrea Wilson from South Richmond. I'd like to know a little bit more about what we're going to do to encourage entrepreneurs. So I think we've had two questions around it in different shapes and forms, but I haven't really heard what the council's planning to do as part of the two strategies.
Well, we already do quite a lot in terms of encouraging entrepreneurs, and I talked about the workspace options that we had in, firstly in Patch, which has been tremendously successful. But the other big thing that we've done, we've had a program for the last 5 years running under what we call the Phoenix Enterprise Program, which basically has helped a number of entrepreneurs in terms of training, mentorship, contacts. In fact, I think at the last count, we've helped over 2,000 people, stroke organisations, with that. And it's often oversubscribed. We're looking now as to how we continue with that going forward and how we continue to put funds behind it as well. We had some successful bids from something called the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which was helping to fund that quite significantly. And of course, a lot of that funding is now coming to an end. So what we're looking to do is how we can continue that and what the programs are like. And we're talking very in detail with a number of providers about that as well. But we do really believe in this area. It's one of the key thrusts in our growth plan. We want to do more in terms of affordable workspace wherever we can. But I think at the moment we've had quite some successful programs at the moment in order to help entrepreneurs going forward.
Okay, Councillor Baldwin, that lady there, and then we're going to move on to bins.
Despite me playing with my hearing aids, I didn't quite hear all of your question. But what I wanted to talk about is that we recently had a partnership conference right here in this building where we brought together employers, education, things like St. Mary's University, Kew Gardens was here, all the big employers, and we've talked about employability and skills and what we needed right here in Richmond to make sure that our young people get jobs, that the people who want jobs can get them, and also that we can apply and different ideas about how we can get employment opportunities here into Richmond Borough. So that was something else that we had done quite recently with our voluntary sector partners as well as with all of our businesses and educational institutions.
Okay, right. So, do you want to still keep on business, or would you like to move on to your subject of bins?
Yes, please.
So we've got on the A316 now, we have the 110 bus route. And all of the bus stops have been put in place for that. And I cycle on that cycle lane, and it's a street bin desert from literally as I come out at Curry's Roundabout all the way up until I get to I think there's a dustbin just by Old Deer Park. But there's all of these, you know, the bus stops have been put in place, and people will sit there and dwell there and wait for their buses and eat their Kit Kats and have a cigarette or whatever. There's no litter bins, there's no street bins, and it is. I'm just wondering if that's something that the council does, or whether that's TfL or.
So I think that's TfL. I mean, that's something that we can attempt to raise with them. It's an interesting thing, bins and bus stops. I know exactly what you mean. It's convenient to have a bin next to the bus stop because you have your snack, you carefully put your stuff in the bin, and off you go on your journey. So obviously then the challenge for the council on a non-TfL street is to try and empty that bin often enough to keep that sort of the social contract going. There is a school of thought that if you don't have a bin, then people will take their rubbish away with them. But from what you're saying, that's not what you're observing on the 316. It's a TfL road, and we can look into why there are or are not bins next to the bus stops.
Yeah. I completely agree. We can pick it up with them. Just to echo Julia's point, you know, at the risk of invoking a bit of Sarah Palin here in relation to Russia, I know Russia because I can see it from my window. I do see another bus stop from the window of my house on the edge of another borough. And frankly, the bin that's next to it is overflowing with detritus. So I think we just need to be really clear that if it is going to happen, that it's going to be collected frequently enough, and it's not going to become more of an eyesore than the littering that you already see.
As is so often the way, it's a case of being careful what you wish for, but we will look into that for you. Lady over the back, is this about bins? Yes. Excellent. Ooh, I don't think so. The first malfunction of a mic in the evening. That's not bad.
Hello?
Okay.
Oh, excellent. Two really. I'll ask mine and then my sister-in-law's, if that's all right. So I used to live on Church Road in Richmond, and she now lives on Church Road in Richmond. And for some unknown reason, I don't know if it's because it's a key thoroughfare, but it's always rather full of litter. And I know people do go up and down it trying to clean it up, but I don't know if we just have lots of people coming into the borough throwing stuff out of their cars, but I don't know if there's something we can do to improve on that. And then I'll just ask my next question because it might help. And then there was a bin at the top of Friar Styles Road, just opposite Terrace Gardens on the corner, which is obviously full of tourists, and just outside the Chinese shop where people sort of loiter, having Chinese, for example. And that's been taken away, and I don't know why.
Okay, so I do know quite a lot about bins. I'm not personally acquainted with the reasons for removal for every single one. I wonder if the bin were outside a takeaway business, whether there's a discussion to be had about where the responsibility lies for dealing with the waste that arises. In my view, I think that if a business is putting what might become litter out into the community, that there's a sort of shared responsibility. But again, I'm happy to try and do some detective work and find out why the bin was removed and whether it would be a good idea to reinstall it or what the reasons were around that. And Church Road, again, I'm not quite sure why. Sometimes we find that people are dropping stuff out the window. I mean, that tends to be more on a dual carriageway where they sort of feel freer. I don't know why. Perhaps we can chat about it and try and find out what the reasons for that particular road being littered are.
Thank you. There's a lady down the side, and then yes, there we are. Bins is an emotive subject. There.
Hi, thank you. A couple of months ago, we requested at St Thomas Aquinas Church in Ham to have the bin that's right in front of the cross to see whether it could be moved. And that was going to be looked into, and there hasn't been an update. And I just wonder, since we're on the subject of bins, whether I could ask if there could be an update on that. I'm not expecting that update this evening, but just if there could be
absolutely.
an
And
update.
this brings me to a broad general point. If you ever have things which are like that, each and every ward of this borough has 3 ward councillors. That's what they're for. And if you don't get a response from them, ask them again. Well, that's the sort of thing. But Julia's going to give you some.
Well, I was quite happy to talk about the bin at St Thomas. not because I know why it hasn't been removed, but I think it absolutely beautifully illustrates the point that in some circumstances it may seem better just to remove the bin if it's causing a problem, and in other circumstances people feel that they want a bin to deal with the problem. This is part of why I love the job that I do. But thank you for raising it, and I've made a little note and I'll try and find out.
Yes, setting the bar very low for employee satisfaction, that is moving bins is really what makes you love the job. Yes?
I'm going to buck the trend slightly and say
Is this
some good
about bins?
things about Richmond Council and bins.
Oh, hooray.
Ha ha. So my bin didn't get collected for a number of weeks, and there is a form on the website that you fill in, and it says, if your collection was missed, we'll collect it within 2 days. And it got collected within 24 hours.
Thanks.
And then the pattern continued, and they kept not getting collected, and I kept having to fill in the form. I ended up emailing on first-name terms with somebody who I think drove past my house every day to make sure it got collected. It was an excellent service, and when it goes wrong, there is a way to get it put right.
That's very good of you to say. Thank you. There was one more. This lady here about bins, was it? It's not about. Oh, yeah. But, all right. Are you about bins and the environment as well? Your environment as well. Let me just check if there's any more bins. Just give me a second. Because we've still got customers. Is there there's an online. We have to keep the online people happy, otherwise they'll switch off and they'll go and watch Love Island. So.
Comment is, Wandsworth offer free bulky rubbish collection. Why not Richmond do the same?
Well, the past, very much like Wandsworth is a foreign country. Well, Wandsworth, like the past, is a foreign country. They do things different there. And they have huge reserves that they sit on, which means that they can afford that sort of thing.
Yes, and Wandsworth do also have a mega skip, but it's not as good as our mega skip. And the mega skip service is something that people can use for free. And if you've got a sofa and it's too heavy, then the lovely officers who help us run the service are very happy to assist. And you can go to the website and sign up to the newsletter that we've mentioned before, and you can get information about when a mega skip is coming to your area.
Is this a new subject now that you've caught my eye? Bins, okay.
One more comment. Torbay has QR codes on bins to alert council that the bin is full. Could Richmond do the same, likewise with recycling bins?
It's a good idea. We do have QR codes on some of our park bins, and I will need to follow up with officers to find out how successful that was. It enables you to very quickly report that the bin is full or overflowing, and that goes straight to the contractor who can then kind of schedule it in. I'm not sure how many of our street bins have that, but I can follow that up and see if that's something that we can do. Or not.
Okay, bins done. Go. Bins gone. Roger Metcalfe has been very patient, wishing to talk about community safety. We will come back to environment matters. Don't worry.
Thank you all. Roger Metcalfe, I chair the Safer Neighbourhood Board, as you kindly said, Gareth. Thank you to the Council for all your support, particularly Jim Millard and Chris Farley, who are on the panel. And can I give a shout out to David Noakes and his colleagues, the community safety officers, who do great work as well. My question is about CCTV in the borough, and could there be a major investment programme over the next few years in investing in more CCTV cameras across the borough, integrated, of course, with police operations and community safety partnership activity? The number of police officers we've got we'll be lucky if it stays the same. It's certainly not going to increase. So technology is the key to making the borough safer. And as many people in the room will know, we've got a fantastic CCTV control suite, which is actually in Wandsworth, but which serves both boroughs. And that is a superb facility with amazing management and support to the police. So will the council please consider a major risk study, an investment programme, to increase CCTV coverage across the borough, based, of course, on risk, and the Safer Neighbourhood Board would be delighted to support such an initiative.
Excellent. Well, I can't spend a penny without running it past Jim Millard.
Well, I know that we have already invested heavily in our CCTV provision, and all our cameras have been upgraded to be high definition and very high quality, which makes a massive difference, I'm told, by those who rely on this as evidence, that we can get really crystal clear pictures. So that's the first thing to say. We have made major investment in our CCTV. Of course, we will continue to monitor that and review need. And I think that's exactly the right way forward, Roger, is to suggest, you know, let's look at what we need in the borough, let's look at what the arguments are for it, and we will absolutely invest wherever we need to make this the safe, well, it already is the safest borough in London, but even safer.
And I know that I was on a call with my community safety officers the other day. We were discussing the importance of the CCTV provision, which is on Richmond Green. I think that we're looking to see whether that's being made permanent. And of course, we're always looking to upgrade the lamp columns that we have to ensure that they can support the sockets, the nomad cameras to go on. But I'd say we have put a lot of money into CCTV. We do recognise the absolute fundamental importance. There was, for people who don't know, there was an incident about a year ago, I think, when there was somebody, I think they set a bin on fire, and we were able to track the person going down and down and down and down, and absolutely pinpoint them, because the cameras that we have now are so good. The old cameras we used to have, it was like watching an episode of Minder on ITV4. It was this very grainy yellow picture. But now the ones that we've got are really good, and if we have more money to be able to invest in them, it will be our priority. Any more on CCTV or community safety in general? We can sort of broaden the point. Yes, sir.
Thank you. It's just about speeding motorbikes and cars, and the noise that's associated with it, but also obviously the safety. And I don't know if other people experience this, but around our part of the borough, you often get this sort of circuit, and it can be people on very fast mopeds, or particularly at weekends, Sundays, and particularly along the river, along Terrace, Lonsdale Road. Something's going to happen one day, but yeah, I just wondered if there's a knowledge of that sort of thing, and anything can be done about it.
Yeah, I'll give a brief piece of feedback. I think this is an issue, and I think that there are a number of different elements to it. First of all, it depends whether we're speaking about legal or illegal bikes and legal or illegal usage. But critically, I think for these types of behaviours, we have to remember that the only enforcement arm that can deal with them is the police. And I think, Gareth may want to mention this or not, but I think the crucial factor here is that CCTV won't deal with these issues. Nothing within the council's powers as presently available to us will allow us to fundamentally tackle those issues. And so ultimately, this is about our lobbying and activism as a party as well as a council to try and ensure that we have adequate policing in this borough and London as a whole, which I'm afraid to say we simply don't. I admire the efforts of the police force in the borough and across London as a whole in general, but there simply isn't a sufficiently large or indeed well enough resourced police force, because at the risk of just meandering slightly, one of the things I'm conscious of with the police is one assumes that they're sort of masters of all forms of criminality, including traffic offences, but actually that's not entirely so. It's a very specialised area of enforcement, and actually many of the officers operating in this borough don't have any exposure to traffic enforcement at all. So it's a major challenge in resource terms.
Yeah, I was at City Hall today. For those of you who don't know, I'm also your London Assembly representative for the South West constituency. I was asking Sadiq Khan directly about his policing budget. And those of you who spent any time looking at his manifesto in 2024 would have seen a pledge for an extra 1,300 police constables and PCSOs on the streets of London by the end of this term, so by 2028. It now emerges, because most people may have thought, an extra 1,300 PCSOs and police constables means 1,000 new hires. No. What it means is taking police out of the rural parks and redeploying them into communities. It means taking them out of the safer school teams and deploying them into communities, taking them out of back office roles and putting them into communities. So the idea that we're going to see more police, but in terms of actual expansion of the Met's role, no, we're not going to get there. And unfortunately, we are seeing so many tough choices coming down the line because I think it was about £250 million that the Metropolitan Police had a black hole in their budget. We don't get funded properly by Sen. Who's this?
260.
260. Yes. I know the problem with this 260 million, and I've not been able to get to the bottom of it yet, is that they keep saying 260 million, but they've saved 7 million on front counters. They've saved 10 million here. It never seems to go down. It's like the magic porridge pot of policing funding. It just keeps going all the time. But no, so all of these things that we get promised, and it's all a bit of smoke and mirrors, I'm afraid. But we are trying as much as we can with the limited resources that we have. And we do have a very good working relationship with the police and with the Safer Neighbourhood Board to try and keep this borough. I mean, we have to remember that this is the safest borough in the safest BCU in the entirety of London. Doesn't mean we could be complacent, but it is worth bearing that in mind. Police and crime, is this police and crime? Yes. Oh, wait until the microphone is with you, madam, and then we can hear. Speak into it like it's a nice
There's been quite a lot of casualties, you know, on that bend. There was a casualty the other year, somebody was killed. We have tremendous noise at night. The house is double glazed where I am, because of often speeding motorbikes, youths on speeding motorbikes, making an incredible racket. I seem to remember vaguely, maybe centuries ago, there was something called silencers, which we were supposed to have on things like motorbikes. Is there anything there now that can be put on these vehicles, which have to be put on these vehicles to quieten it down? But I think they love sort of riding quickly round this bend where I am, you know, and making as much noise as possible.
Yeah, they like to make a lot of noise. Some people might think that they're compensating for other inadequacies.
Oh,
however,
dear me.
How do we know?
Yeah.
Tim Lennon. Sorry, I've been doing this job since 2018. I know a lot of faces around the room.
Thank you, Gareth. I asked online as well. So on the way here, I was an annoying neighbour, and I spotted someone parked on the wide zigzags on a zebra crossing, and I used the very helpful council telephone number to call and report it, which is brilliant. And I just suddenly thought, is there? I'm aware that Westminster Council have now got an online app which residents can use to essentially report all sorts of different things that they need to tell the council. And it sounds like quite a clever idea, because rather than the app making you try and decide who you need to tell or how or what the problem exactly is, you can simply use the app to make the report, and then it kind of helps. That's one.
We certainly do have a Richmond app. Councillor Baldwin, are you wishing to lean forward to tell us all about the app?
No, I'm trying desperately to hear what people are saying. So there is a Richmond app, but I think...
and you can use it to report.
And you can use it to report, you know. Is that what you were saying? I'm sorry.
Hang on. Yep. Who wishes to come in? So, yes.
I just wanted to clarify what it is that you're talking about, because it sounds to me that you're talking about an app that is slightly more intelligent, let's say, than if you know that there's dog fouling and you go to and you report dog fouling or report a missed bin or report, you already know how, and you're triaging. Are you saying this is an app that does the triaging for you and you just send the words in and it does the magic behind the scenes?
That's my understanding, yes. It sounds like it's a little bit like that. But yes, I mean, and I guess I was kind of thinking, you know, maybe if Westminster have got this and it works quite well, then obviously we don't want to go and spend a fortune building or enhancing our own app to do that. But maybe there's, you know, and I just thought it's great to have the phone number. But you know, there's always, like the bins earlier and other types of issues where residents don't always know who to talk to or what the right process might be. And these kind of things just make it super easy for people to actually, you know, share the details.
Alexander.
Yeah, I think it's a really good challenge, and I think we need to embrace technology to try and enhance the ways that residents can report all sorts of things to us, that included. I think one little kind of caveat, though, is that often identifying exactly where somewhere is actually almost much better done conversationally, because the person on the end can kind of validate with you that they've got exactly the right spot. So there are some complexities there, but obviously with technology you can also help to isolate locations. I think the other thing to just say around this is that one of the maddening things I would love to see, but frankly the law doesn't permit, is actually where residents actually witness, for example in your case, illegal or non-compliant parking, is that material that is sent could be used in some way for the enforcement itself, but it can't be. It's inadmissible. So it requires our officers to be on scene and do it themselves, which is a frustration, because actually sort of civic activism in that regard would help us to bear down more heavily on some of these non-compliant behaviours.
Jim?
Yes, I mean, creating the app was something we promised to do when we were elected in 2022. We've done it, and it has the geolocation function of your phone, which really helps to report things. We are under huge pressure from the government. They want to take away £29 million within the next 3 years from us in funding. They wanted to take £45 million away. We challenged that robustly. We launched legal action and they stood back and reduced that by 16 million, which is a result, but it's still a massive amount that they want to cut. It's a 58% cut in our funding, and we're going to launch an innovative and wide-ranging transformation programme to transform how the council works, because we don't want that to affect frontline services. We will fight with tooth and nail to protect frontline services, find efficiencies, change the way we work. Now, one of the ways is to take the next step, and that is to look at like any organisation, but particularly an organisation that does so many different things. We have grown quite a few different software products within our organisation. We hold data in lots of different places. We want to fundamentally transform that to become rationalised and lean in our use of software, and to have one central data thing. Now, what this means for you and for businesses, for residents and businesses, is that we will redesign access to services around the way that residents need to access the council services. We will redesign it around the way you want to work, and one of those is to have one simple login where you put your details in once and you access all the things the council does in a much more seamless way than you're currently experiencing. So what the app's already done, it will enable us to take that next leap forward. That's our commitment in our for the next 4 years, and watch this space.
Just to give you an assurance that the app actually does work, I'll come to it if we can bring the microphone to the stage here. The reason I know it works is that every now and again I use it to report something, because I could report something as leader of the council and officers would rush to make sure that it gets sorted, but I sometimes report using a different email via the app, and it still works. The things still get done, so it's good. Lady there.
Hi there, Alex Gale. Question on the funding reform 2.0 and how you think it will likely impact non-statutory services and equally the cost of provision of some of those, parking permits, garden waste, etc. Balance between cost cutting versus raising additional funds to plug that gap.
Could you repeat that? It's about funding reform, isn't it?
Yep, so you just mentioned the £29 million gap.
Yes.
Is it going to be filled? Are we going to lose services? What's the plan?
Well, the risk is that by cutting that much money over such a short period, that it would impact frontline services. So we're taking fundamental action. We're launching a transformation programme. Now, let's be clear, we've already found, over the last 8 years, we've found £50 million in annual savings in terms of efficiencies in the back office without impacting frontline services. It's about rationalising and finding greater efficiencies. But we'll go further. And there's 5 strands to our transformation programme. The first one is what I talked about, is redesigning services around residents' needs, which makes, it's all about improving outcomes for residents accessing our services, but it also saves us a lot of money, which can make sure that we protect those frontline services. The second thing is we will look at all our assets across the whole borough, and this is where the opportunity lies for the sort of spaces that we've been talking about, making sure that we use our space to its maximum efficiency and get the most out of it. For example, we're already freeing up space in the Civic Centre in Twickenham. We're sort of consolidating our workspace so that we can free up the top floor to rent out for commercial income to help us. We're going to have to do a lot more income generation, a lot more commercially minded, because that is how we will now pay for statutory services, because the government is cutting almost all the funding for statutory services from us. So we have to do it on our own. The third way we're going to do this is by investing in growth, and that's why it's important to invest in things like Richmond Town Centre, because by growing the local economy and lobbying for greater retention of business rates, we can help to be much more financially resilient as a borough. So we've done rationalising the way we work, we've done our assets, we've done the growth piece, and then it's about early help and intervention. And that's really particularly important for my colleagues here, for Julia and Piers with children's services, with adult social care, and Chris, who's in charge of dealing with homelessness. We're working with some experts now to really double down on our focus on early help and intervention, which improves outcomes, using the power of data and AI to make sure that we're joining up so that every contact counts, every contact with us. If it's someone who's receiving adult social care support, do they need help with preventing homelessness? Do they need help with council tax reduction? Making sure that all those services crowd in as early as possible to prevent escalation and more expense further down the line. Sorry, that's a long answer. The short answer is no, it won't. We will absolutely make sure that it doesn't impact frontline services.
There we go. Right, thank you very much. I did promise I've got somebody online. I'm going to take that very quick, find out what the online one is.
Okay, it's a separate subject. Regards to new home provision, will the council commit to publishing restrictive limits and actively challenge excessive targets imposed from higher authorities?
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I knew my time would come. Housing had to arrive at some point. I wasn't expecting that question, to be honest, about challenging home building. What we're intending to do is build homes, and we're hoping to build homes for all sections of the community, and we are doing that, whether it's for social housing, affordable housing, whether it's for intermediate housing for key workers to bring people into the borough, or whether it's for the private housing market, for rental and for people to buy, because all sections of the community, our community, need houses and need homes. So we're not going to restrict our housing, and we're not seeking to challenge targets as such. But there are ways we need to engage with that, because the targets have to be realistic. We have to be able to work to them. Yeah, as I said, I knew my time would come, but I wasn't expecting that question.
Jim Millard. I'm just briefly coming in as the outgoing housing lead, and Chris is doing a great job in taking over, but also with my responsibility for property, we're working very closely together, because I think at the root of that question is an awareness that there are some very big housing targets being handed down to us by central government, and I can understand the concern about that. But what we're saying is, look, obviously we can't build lots of tower blocks in Richmond. It's rightly protected. There's a lot of protected green space and a lot of protected heritage. What we are going to do is small scale, at scale, identify lots of small, underused, unexpected places. We're quite well developed as a borough, but we're not necessarily using every space efficiently and to its maximum benefit. So we're going to put those sites together, work with developers, registered providers, housing associations to say, how can we provide attractive, sustainable homes that make the most of these spaces and provide the range of homes, as Chris said, that we need in this borough.
Thank you, Julie.
I just wanted to add a layer of reassurance that we are proud of our local plan, which is the planning policies that guide new development in the borough. They're very strong on protecting our green space, our waterways, our air quality, making sure that we've got all the services and things when new development comes forward. And both us as elected politicians and the officers who work in our planning policy team are very, very robust when it comes to responding to, for example, government consultations and setting out exactly why decision making should stay here in Richmond as the local planning authority, rather than be called in and decisions made by people who don't understand the borough as well as we do. But I completely agree with what my colleagues have said, that we are prepared and want to see housing development in the borough, because there is a housing need in the borough. So just wanted to add that planning policy element to it.
Thank you. Now, I did promise that we would get on to environment. We've got about 10 minutes left. So
hi, my name's Hannah Richardson. I'm here with Friends of the Earth, Richmond and Twickenham.
Oh, yes.
We've heard a lot about really good things in the borough and some not so good things, and I'm sure everyone would agree that the river is one of the most fantastic things that we have. We want to walk by it, we want to swim in it, we want to do all sorts of things, with it.
and it's under threat from the Teddington Direct River Abstraction Plan. It's a big year for this plan, and I want to know, if possible, what Richmond's going to do to really protect it from all the ghastly kind of Thames water stuff that they're going to dump in it. Thanks.
Cometh the Air, cometh the Chair of the Environment Committee.
First of all, I know a few people who work at Thames Water, and the first thing I'd say is they're decent, intelligent, hardworking people. However, we're not happy about the Teddington Direct River Abstraction because we don't feel it's been demonstrated that it's not going to harm our river, where people swim, people fish, children paddle. It's so important. It defines this borough, and we can all be very lyrical and rhetorical about that. So what are we going to do about it? Well, you'll have seen that Gareth, as leader of the council, working with Sarah Olney MP and Munira Wilson MP, and colleagues over the border in Kingston as well, have been working with the Solar Campaign Group and ward councillors who've had to fight local issues such as Katie and Alex in St Margaret's in North Twickenham, where they were going to dig a shaft on Moormead. Well, thankfully that's not going to happen anymore. But we still have concerns about the overall concept of taking water out of the Thames at times of drought and replacing it with treated effluent pipe from Mogden. Now, they say it will be highly treated, and they've been running a pilot to show, what quality of water they can get out of that. They've also done a huge statutory consultation last year. I believe, from memory, was it 14,000 responses they've received? And you asked them, didn't you, how many of those were supportive? I don't think they gave us an exact answer on that. But anyway, they've had a huge piece of work to do going through the responses to that statutory consultation. And they will be reporting back to the community on that sometime early in 2026. I don't know exactly when. Now, Thames Water were keen to point out that many of those responses were postcard responses from the solar campaign, and we warned them not to disregard those lightly. However, the council and other community organisations will have put in responses, and Richmond Council's response was extremely detailed, extremely robust, and extremely challenging on a lot of the technical aspects of it, as well as the community aspects, the impacts on play space, the impact on aquatic ecology, the impact on terrestrial ecology, the impact on transport potentially, and on all the impacts that you would expect from a planning perspective, so rooted in material considerations. So all that's gone into Thames Water, and we'll be expecting the next step will be feedback on that statutory consultation. Our officers at Richmond Council have been engaging with Thames Water to understand what resources, what money will be forthcoming from Thames Water to fund the additional officer work that is necessary because of this application. It's a huge amount of work and time that officers are putting in, ensuring that we give detailed and proper evidence-based responses. And that piece of work is ongoing. What happens eventually will be that Thames Water will apply for a development consent order. It will be decided by the National Planning Inspectorate on behalf of the Secretary of State. Richmond Council will have a statutory role as an official consultee. So it's important that we get our facts straight and that we engage when we're asked to. And this is an ongoing process, looking at the things I've mentioned: water quality, air quality, all of a whole range of issues. And that will unfold over the next few months. So that's where we are with it, and the more political campaign that Gareth will be leading will also continue. I hope that gives you a sort of insight into where we are with it, but if you've got specific questions about it, perhaps we'll follow them up afterwards.
Thank you. And the question, do you still have the microphone, or has the microphone been... Yes? We'll wait. Here we go.
This is a question on, again from Richmond and Twickenham Friends of the Earth. A fellow member there has asked about the Make My House Green leaflet that she's received, and sees that it makes reference to solar panels and batteries, but not to heat pumps. And we wondered if there's any plans to kind of promote a different scheme, a more expansive scheme than just solar panels.
So, well, thank you for mentioning Make My House Green. For those of you that don't know, it's an organisation that the council is working with that enables residents to get lots of information about the solar panels that will be right for their home, and also a £500 discount if you choose to go ahead. No pressure, you can engage and then say, no, that's not for me, or buy your panels from someone else, but we hoped it would be a helpful and supportive way to encourage people to get renewable energy on their properties. I don't know quite the answer to the heat pumps one. It's a very interesting one, and one that I'll need to take away and talk to our climate and sustainability team, who are led by the same lady who leads the communications team. So we'll discuss it and work out exactly what we'll do. But one thing we do want to do is look at ways in which we can get more financing in to support people who want to retrofit their homes in general. Exactly how we do that is probably going to take a little bit of work, a bit of looking at other local authorities. Is there any best practice out there? Can we get the community itself to do crowdfunding or some kind of method of getting a more collective approach to it, because we're going to need that if we're going to meet our net zero target. Okay. So yeah, watch this space.
There was a very quick second question, and that was about the allotments on Shacklegate Lane.
Okay.
And whether you've got any plans to review your cemetery policy and perhaps encourage more people to do the environmentally friendly thing of getting cremated instead of being buried.
Well, there's a long discussion to be had, and I think we
need to keep it short because I need to bring it.
Okay, and I think that we'd need to have other experts in the room to discuss the finer points of the environmental impacts of cremation, which I think also need to be considered.
It's just the loss of the growing of food.
I absolutely agree, and you know, it's been a really difficult decision, and I've engaged with the people in Teddington who've written to me about this. So, as a council, we feel that the prudent approach to provide the burial space that we think we're going to need, and we haven't made it up, you know, it's been calculated, is to prepare that space, which is just adjacent to the existing cemetery at Teddington, and has an existing historic cemetery use.
Yeah, I love it. I want my dog
to prepare for that for burial space. We think that's prudent to do because otherwise we'll face an issue in the very near future. But what our officers are also doing is keenly awaiting the Law Commission report back following their consultations last year, which will inform a review that we will do within the borough about how to more effectively use the cemetery space, because I think we'll need to do both things, and that work is beginning. There'll be a report on that to Environment Committee later in the year.
Okay, Melissa, is it a quick question?
It's a quick question. Why do Richmond Council support leaf blowers when they are so negative for the environment? There must be a better way.
Right, sorry, I'm getting bored of the sound of my voice. I hope you're not. Leaf blower, yes, they are irritating and noisy, and I do understand why people complain about them. The question is, what's the alternative? Now, we are looking at sort of electric-powered alternatives, which are more environmentally friendly. It's the only effective way that we have for getting leaves out from underneath cars that are parked, which is one of the biggest challenges to clearing leaves that we have. Sorry, I realise I'm looking at Melissa. I should be looking at the camera. Again, we will keep under review what the best way to clear those annoying leaves under cars is, but at the moment, I'm sorry, that is a slightly necessary evil that we have to bear. I wish we could end on a more positive note.
No,
actually.
well, I mean, I'm about to bring it down even further. A friend of mine who's now sadly dead used to live in Spain, and what they would do is they would ask everybody that parks on one side of the road once a month not to park on that side of the road. I don't think that would go down particularly well here, but there we go. I'm afraid we have no time for further questions, ladies and gentlemen. 2 hours has flown by, so it just remains for me to say thank you to all of the panellists who have given their answers. Thank you to the officers who have done so much to make this a successful evening. Thank you to our British Sign Language interpreter. I know I apologise. And I apologise now, I speak very quickly, so no. And, but of course, as always, it's you that make this, so it's always thank you chiefly to yourselves. Thank you, good night.